Hi everyone, welcome to the latest episode of Absolute Candor. This time we are reviewing The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 6, The Price. And oh Mike, was this an emotional gut punch. I came away from this feeling quite drained actually, in a different way than Episode 2. Episode 2 I think was just the shock of it, the fact that there was so much going on. In this it was that steady deconstruction of their relationship, which had that inevitability to it. And I think knowing what's happened to Joel, seeing how their relationship broke down steadily over that consistent period of, every birthday, tracking those key moments as they gradually grew further and further apart, it was just harrowing to watch in many ways. But I was totally invested. I think this has got to be one of the strongest efforts of the season, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of it must be in my top, certainly in my top three Last of Us episodes. And I'd agree, best episode of the season. Like you say, it's always really powerful when you kind of show something almost in reverse. We know what the destination is, and kind of we're seeing the journey of how they get there, and it makes it all the more poignant. But it's also really relatable because it's kind of 16th birthday onwards. Like, I think most people can relate to. Like, it's not purely that Joel is a bit of a fuck up himself and he's doing a bad job of being a dad. It's like Ellie's obviously a teenager and going through some stuff, and it's kind of a perfect storm of stuff while you've got this zombie apocalypse going on at the same time. So it's a really interesting kind of insight into their situation. And yeah, just everything about this episode, even like I can understand why some people might be critical of it, because we've only got one more episode after this, and it's kind of a complete not much action in it at all, and it sort of takes you completely away from the present, which is Ellie at the hospital. But for me, it was yeah, perfect. I don't know if you could argue maybe it should have been earlier in the season, or
Yeah, I've been kind of back and forthing on this in terms of the structure of this season generally. Although this episode evoked the Bill episode in season 1 where we kind of hit a detour and explored that story, I'm glad we got this. I certainly wouldn't wish it away, but part of me does wonder if we could have maybe spaced out some of these flashbacks and built up to this, that we could have had. And I felt the same with the way they've handled Abby. I think we've been away from Abby too long. Even if we know that inevitably we're going to get a third season that switches perspective to her, Catherine O'Hara's kind of all but confirmed that in an interview recently, that's happening, and when she was asked about her participation next season. I think there would have been room for us to have circled back a bit to the current standing of things and not just have it be the final moment as she approaches the theatre. It's tough because you also have limited by the fact that Pedro's already been killed off. We've lost Joel already, so that, there may have been the only way to make this work in 7 episodes is to take one and tell this narrative in the way they've done it. I don't know. It's tough. I think it would have been interesting to see how they could have redesigned it.
I think it was more powerful because Joel died early in the season, and everyone's like, that's the last we'll see of Pedro Pascal. Isn't that a shame? And then we got the tease at the end of the previous episode that we were going to get a Joel, some more Joel. And I think that was kind of almost like fan service. Like, don't worry, you're going to get a Joel episode, and we got a full Joel episode. Whereas if they'd kind of killed Joel and then we'd had like 5 or 6 like flashbacks to Joel every episode or something, it wouldn't have the effect of killing him wouldn't have been as powerful as having like 3 clear episodes with no Joel in.
Well, yeah, that's an interesting devil's advocate, isn't it? Because then you're preserving the impact of the death. I think it's looking at... Well, I think actually this speaks more to the problem of this only being 7 episodes long. I do think, fundamentally, from a narrative design point of view, this season has felt quite rushed. They have covered a lot in a very short amount of time. I would have liked, I think, a little bit more breathing room, which would have allowed there have been that sort of a steady rhythm of flashbacks of seeing Pedro in it, if you had more gaps between his appearances.
For me, it would have to be I don't really like the short flashbacks. For me, it would have to have been like a quarter of an episode was spent like in a flashback, and then the next.
So it's meaningful
in the present or something. Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, I think it's too disjointed, and you kind of it doesn't have the same impact. But I broadly happy with the way they've done it, and I think it all just comes down to the next episode and how if they tie it up effectively enough, despite only leaving them one episode to do it, then that's fine.
Yeah, and I'm expecting that last episode to be quite long as well. I would imagine this is going to be pushing the 55 minutes mark, which would be interesting to see. I do want to get into the performances because I think this is a showcase of both Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey in terms of their range, their nuance, and how well they performed the writing. This was a great script as well. I think that the scenes themselves were pitch perfect in their writing. Directed by Neil Druckmann, co-director of the Last of Us Part 2 as well. So he directed this episode, which is really cool to see him once again shifting into live action. In an episode that fundamentally was about the relationships of the two characters that were indelible to the game, so it made sense that he'd be the one shepherding it. I want to start with Bella Ramsey because of how brilliantly she played the subtlety of her changes from each of her birthday milestones. That sort of the difference between 16, 17, and 18-year-old Ellie was really small but very noticeable, just in her manner, the way she was styled, the way she carried herself, and the way she spoke. She was so much more, but then we saw that earlier flashback to in the that fantastic sequence in the museum, which was just beautifully done. A couple of the shots extremely faithful to the game, which for me was really real kick to see that in live action.
The way they kept the consistency in terms of she woke up on her birthday, and then Joel was getting her a present of some sort and like a cake. He was having to be resourceful to get a cake and stuff.
The misspelled cake was really cool, wasn't it? But yeah.
and he couldn't get chocolate, and then like the next birthday he managed to get chocolate. Just like small touches like that are really cool. But I liked how because they kept that consistency. You could really see, although it was only I think over 3 years, you could really see the change from when she was 16, where she was basically a kid and her bedroom was all colourful and she was really like happy. She woke up and was really happy and excited, obviously, about her birthday. And then like the slow evolution into like teenage angst and poorer relationship with Joel, and keeping the consistency of how they kind of shot all that stuff made it so much more powerful. And like you say, Bella Ramsey's had so much flack from certain corners of the corners of the internet that you'd expect, but it was. I feel like if you watch this episode, I don't know how you can come out of that and say that she's wrong for the character or does a bad job with the material.
Totally authentic a performance in terms of her playing a lot younger than herself and showing the incremental change as that relationship devolves and she starts to mature in a different direction than what he's expecting. All of those elements just came together, from the directing to the way each section was structured. And of course, she's playing off of Pedro Pascal, who I think is defined his portrayal of Joel in this episode, I think, here, in a really meaningful way. I would have liked, I think, a bit longer with the Eugene stuff, because I think that's been steadily breadcrumbed throughout the season so far. They've done a nice job of setting that up, but then in some ways also it proved to be the catalyst needed for Ellie to finally turn on him, and that horrible scene where she tells the doctor, to Gail's face, he's lying to you, because that moment he said, using the same tone of voice he used on the top of the hill when he said that that everything about the Fireflies was true. It all of those moments, those narrative threads connected together brilliantly, and it was kind of like it was heartbreaking to watch that, to see Ellie completely turn away from him, and it was justified in her mind. I think it was that she felt betrayed, and that came across so well in Bella Ramsey's performance. It was just absolutely pitch perfect from an acting point of view, and they had a lot of heavy lifting in this episode. Just great. Really impressed.
Yeah, they completely agree with all that. And when the museum, especially like the Natural History Museum or the Space Museum or whatever it was, the excitement that she manages to convey is just so genuine, and the interaction between the two characters in the museum, and like. Oh, it's just so it's like really wholesome, unusually wholesome for the show,
and
it
worked,
made me
didn't it? that juxtaposition, I think, works really nicely against what they're facing now. To see that was the origin story of their relationship, like the space capsule scene where she visualizes the takeoff with the music. It's just great. So
And
awesome.
I even in season one, because it reminded me of season one a lot. But a lot of the time in season one, there is a threat somewhere, but it was like one of a few times where we've seen their relationship where there isn't a threat. Basically, that like Ellie could be completely relaxed. It's literally like she's a kid again. And the times we got that before were like Joel and Ellie Ellie telling jokes to Joel and doing the stupid jokes that she likes and stuff. Like minor things where it was kind of you were seeing her childhood coming out.
But like
Whereas
a glimpse rather
we
than
had
a
like
full. Yeah.
yeah, it's where we had like 10, 20 minutes of like full child mode Ellie, and it was really good to see.
Really gratifying to see, right? And then so let's talk about Pedro Pascal's performance in this. The porch scene at the very end, which is what we build up to, the reveal that Ellie didn't in fact walk past him and did come back, really well held. They held that back smartly. They did exactly what I've been hoping for. So shout out to me from a few episodes of Absolute Candor ago when I was hoping to see alternate viewpoints from the same scene. So seeing Joel,
The party, you said, as
yeah,
well.
Joel
Remember,
and Maria having that conversation together, her validating his support of Ellie, and then him, that validation triggering him suddenly going for Seth and leading to that moment where she shuts him down. Having that perspective on the moment before Joel intervenes is exactly what I was hoping for. I was hoping that, because we never see it in the game, we hadn't seen it in the show up to this point, and it was, at the time, felt like a really missed opportunity that they've now thankfully capitalized on. And it just gave it's another moment of interaction between Joel and Tommy as well, seeing Tommy as a father, and Joel and Maria, and just having that time with Pedro Pascal's interpretation of this character, leading up to that porch scene, which was I welled up watching it. It was really, really tough to watch. Pedro Pascal's really explicit dialogue in it when he's saying, like, because I love you and you'll never know what this means. He doesn't say that in the game. That scene, there's a line exchange which gets me every time, which is when Ellie says, "I don't think I can ever forgive you for that, but I'd like to try." And it's the notion that they were trying to reconcile, and it was on the cusp of being not the same, but certainly repairing what had been lost, to only then know what happens to then Joel immediately after that. But him just telling her outright, with his eyes welling up, and just that performance, so restrained, so pitch perfect, and I was just blown away by that. If he's not nominated for an Emmy, I think either of them could have been nominated for acting awards for this episode.
Yeah, I would. The whole time I was just like wanting Ellie to like not forgive him, because it's like, you can understand, but it's the subject matter is so effective, because like as a parent you can put yourselves in Joel's shoes and understand what he went through, but then obviously as on the other side, it's completely illogical to save one person and sacrifice everyone else, basically. But there was a bit in the museum where I think in the capsule again, where like Joel just has a tear go down his eye when Ellie's enjoying the gift, basically, and the whole time it's just like Joel isn't a perfect dad, obviously, but he's trying everything he can to make her happy and make her day great, and he gets it wrong, and like a bit haphazard sometimes, but he always means well, and he always believes he's doing the right thing. But then when he does things like with the Fireflies, and this was communicated well in season 1 as well, that he was always believes he's doing the best thing. And then when Ellie calls him selfish, which is true that he is selfish, but you can really relate to him. Yeah, like he isn't thinking, "Oh, I can't live without Ellie." He's not thinking like that. He's thinking, "I love her. I need to protect her."
Yes, and that
which is different.
Which is, but... and it sort of allows you as the audience to relate to his imperfection I think. And that's what's so interesting about this portrayal of his character and the way it was written too, is that he is flawed and he does sort of like make a bad judgment in terms of the way he has certain conversations, like about her, when he finds her with smoking, getting the tattoo, and like him trying to question her sexuality in that moment, which then she just knee jerks and tries to move out, and he stops her with all of that stuff. He was sort of too blunt and too reactive, and those sort of him as a father having to try and figure that out and figure out where the line is where you should be. The way to have those conversations was great to see that nuance and those flaws in him. Made it so much more grounded and relatable.
Yeah, and it's because that stuff is completely unrelated to the zombie shit going on. Because and like at the party, him basically losing it and punching Seth or whatever. That's like he didn't do the wrong thing there. That reaction from him was completely acceptable. Ellie's reaction is also completely acceptable from like a teenager. You don't want to be embarrassed. You don't want your dad coming in and punching another like parent in front of you, like in front of your friends. So they're both completely understandable. It's not like this is a weird situation because Joel isn't really her dad, or because of the zombie stuff going on, or because they're in a weird settlement.
No, it's just people being reactive and emotional.
Just life.
Exactly. Yeah, and I like the idea that they're both right and wrong. I think that's a really interesting take on these two characters together, and the great culmination of this is in that final moment where we get Ellie admitting that she wants to try to move past this and try to find a way forward, which now makes her desperation to catch up with Joel, even though we've seen prior to that her frostiness and her distance in the first episode of the season. When we get that moment of frantic chasing, trying to get to him, it feels totally earned and justified. And the payoff, I think that's what I felt most positively about this, is that even though we have technically hit pause on the present day stuff until we got to the end sting of the the final scene, this now feels narratively very satisfying. I think you could now watch it. I think it's built for binging. I think it's built for the box set. You could very easily now watch this and it would feel very connected and really thoughtfully designed in terms of where stuff has been placed. I just would have liked to think a longer season. I think 10 episodes would have given it just that little bit more breathing room, and we wouldn't have had to quite blaze through the source material quite as fast as we have.
Yeah, I feel like it's one that you'll want to watch through again, because like the torture scene with Joel, like he looks at Ellie while he's on the floor, and that look it has a completely different meaning now that we've watched this last episode, because they've basically reconciled, whereas like at the time it was like you almost like, oh, I wish they'd been able to have a conversation before this had happened and kind of repair some bridges and stuff. But although like you say they didn't get as far as they could have with that, I think it was nowhere near as bad as what we thought it was at the time, because we thought that the last time they saw each other was when she went past the porch.
She walked past, yeah.
But on Pedro, you've already mentioned it a bit, but I haven't watched Last of Us since season 1 aired, so I haven't watched it again since. And when he promised Ellie after the Fireflies that he didn't kill them all and stuff, and there were others that were immune, and all the promises that he made to her. And then he made the promise in this episode, and it was exactly the same.
Yeah.
Like, pitch perfect, exactly the same, written exactly the same. And it recalled it instantly to me without any like obvious hints. Sometimes they really telegraph it in the episode or something.
Cut back.
Yeah,
they show like 2 seconds silently of the shot to make you visually connect it. Didn't need it. Bella's reaction to it as well. The subtle change
you could see in her
expression.
reaction that you could see that she was recalling it in.
Yeah. And that's really tough to convey without dialogue. That's really hard for her to deliver that. And for not only Pedro to take the words off the page and deliver that so pitch perfect, but for Bella Ramsey's Ellie to respond in such a way that we knew we were with her. We totally felt what she was feeling in that moment, because it connected dots for us as well.
And it's the whole... because it's all kind of grounded in real life in terms of the emotions and the interactions between the characters and stuff. So I think some people are rooting for Joel, some people are rooting for Ellie, or most people are kind of on both. But like when he promised her, I thought like, oh, this is like the Firefly situation. I don't really trust him, so I can see where Ellie's coming from. But I want Ellie to trust him because the
Mm.
alternative is what they have a massive fight, or goes, they just have another falling out. And obviously, I wanted to ask you actually about that sequence because to me it seemed as though Joel was trying to do what Ellie wanted, and he was actually trying to get, was it Eugene? Trying to
That's
get
right.
him back to the
Yep.
settlement. He started off, and then he started saying he was getting cold, and it seemed as though, like, if you're not as confident as Ellie about people turning because
Mm.
she's immune, she's had people like in the room with her that have turned, and she's watched them turn, as we saw in season one. I can see how that would make you like, oh, he's starting to turn.
Hmm.
Talking about being cold, and he's starting to get a bit like his what he was saying was getting a bit more and more out there. Um, so I could even in that situation where Joel has explicitly said, "I promise I won't, I'll promise I will do what you want." I could still relate to Joel and think I can see where he's coming from in this situation
Yeah.
because it's just not
I
not worth
yeah.
the risk
I
of.
think it was my take on it was that it was played. I think in that moment that Joel genuinely did want to try and get him back to Jackson and make Ellie feel better about what was happening so that he could say goodbye. And I think it was just as he'd sent her away and the line about being cold and then him getting into that clearing that I think he realized for himself that I'm not going to be capable of being the person here that Ellie wants me to be. And then the bigger things started coming into play, the risk factor of him turning on the journey back, and he had to do what he had to do. Again, very tastefully, I thought the shot, the cutaway, and we just heard the birds flying,
It's
brilliantly
not even
done.
really a gunfire.
No, just a
It was just
slight
slightly
echo, wasn't it?
muffled.
Yeah,
Yeah,
really sort of restrained. It was so much more impactful that we didn't see it, and then we had the mirrored shot of his body with the headshot, all tied up, being dragged along behind the horse. Just sort of now calling back to, but in the chronology of the show, foreshadowing what then happens to Joel. I believe in that moment he genuinely was trying to acquiesce to what Ellie wanted, but then realized he couldn't, and that made the conflict that there was a real, just again talk about subtlety, a moment where Pedro shows he realizes he can't, he needs to now make this decision and kill Eugene. Um, I didn't think that scene would play out the way it did with Gale and Tommy and when they were back in Jackson. I didn't think that's how that reveal was going to go down. I thought that would be done privately. I didn't think that's how Gale would find out. Like that, like so publicly, so open with so many characters involved. I just didn't expect that. I thought that would have been a conversation maybe that Ellie had with Gale later
or
on. Um,
yeah, or like I don't know, something about the way the body is or something.
yeah,
Someone says, "Oh, there's no way it was like a
someone
close
else would
quarters
point out.
thing," or
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that the fact that it was so public and so immediate and raw, I think totally tracked. It wasn't a weird story choice at all. I think it made total sense for what Ellie was feeling in that moment, but it hit so much harder and it was really unexpected
it,
that
it was
sequence.
yeah, a
Uncomfortable.
total gut punch. And also
Yeah.
again, I can see why Joel was sugarcoating. What's the point in telling
Yep.
Gale like the worst possible like version of the story and obviously as like a dad and as an adult, you kind of, you would, it's like an impulsive teenage thing that Ellie did, but also she was completely justified for
Mm-hmm.
being massively pissed off. So again, there's like both ways of looking at it.
And that's a lot of layers to factor into an episode that is
Yeah,
ostensibly not action heavy, that is a flashback to with a character that we know is already dead. That is a lot of material and nuance to pack into a very actually emotionally busy episode. And hats off to
and
them for being able to deliver that. You know.
talking about rewatching it. Now you go back and rewatch whatever episode 1 or 2 where
Mm.
Joel is having the sessions with Gale, the therapy sessions with
Yep.
Gale, like completely. It's almost like that that whole scene was just throwaway
Mm.
back then because it's almost like only watching it now that you would have any relevant context to that scene. at
Yeah,
all.
the
They
fact
obviously
that
she mentions, I can't forgive you or whatever it
yeah,
was like, for killing Eugene, but without actually seeing the circumstances of it, it's almost irrelevant that
well,
we've
exactly, and
had that.
those circumstances being that Gail found out in front of her husband's body, was told about this with Joel present as well.
He
That
tried to lie about
and
it.
who tried to lie about it, and that's the context that enhances that understanding of those previous scenes. And that I do feel like narratively, even though I feel like again it has been a bit rushed, I do think though the way those moments have been designed this season has been very thoughtful. And if it's almost as if they've kind of gone like, okay, we've got 7 episodes, but they're going to make those 7 episodes connective and satisfying and pay off longer term, encouraging that repeat viewing and for fans to dig deep, look for those other little subtleties and references when they're able to go back and watch it again. That's pretty cool for a show like this to be able to achieve that. Just
I don't think
yeah.
I've got any criticisms of this one at all. It was pretty much perfect for me.
I can't wait to see how this wraps. I have in my head what I think is going to be the cliffhanger. If it takes a moment from the game, which I will obviously not spoil, then strap in for next week.
So can I ask you? So we had at the end of the previous episode, she's just got out of like the basement, or no, she was still in the basement of the hospital. Basically, that was the end of the previous episode.
That's right. She was torturing Nora, wasn't she, in the end of the last episode?
And then at the end of this episode, she's walking back to the theater.
That's right.
So that was a bit strange to me that we haven't got how she got out the basement of the hospital. She didn't go and find Abby in the hospital.
So right there is, I think, then the impact of the 7 episodes is that's a whole massive sequence in the game that we are not getting now.
Isn't Abby in the hospital though, or she's not in the?
She was, if it's taken from the game, she was not in the hospital. No.
Oh right, okay.
But the journey out of the hospital, there's some narrative moments there that we haven't gotten, and yeah, that's quite a skip to get her back to the theater.
So that was a bit. I almost would have preferred them not to even show that at the end of this episode
because jarring.
It was a bit weird.
Yeah, I think you feeling that was a bit jarring is justified. I think that is a reasonable thought. I felt the same. But we are set up for a very interesting last episode, I think, and knowing that it's definitely going to get season 3 and they're already writing it, and it's already it's already on the way. That again makes me very invested, even if it ends up being a cliffhanger. Then still all in and just wanting to see how this thing wraps up.
Absolutely.
Very exciting, folks. Thank you again so much for tuning in to this latest episode of Absolute Candor. You can find us on all of the platforms: Threads, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, Podbean, at Burly Bird Media, and also our Discord as well. Please come and join that community. We've got some great people over there, and it's lovely to see you guys jumping into our live chat on our Wednesday and Saturday live shows on YouTube and Twitch, but also the discussions going on our Discord. Please do consider jumping in. Mike, where can people find you?
You can find me at theXboxGuide.com and the same on Threads and Blue Sky.
Lovely, folks. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.